Welcome to The Verdict. Kent Meyers with Mick Cornett joining you again this Sunday. Mick, how you doing?
I'm doing fine, Kent. Just still hanging in there in this new era of wearing a mask when I go outside and doing a lot of Zoom calls.
Yeah, since we're doing this by Zoom, I've taken the liberty of not wearing a mask. I'm presuming this is the only time of the day I probably won't have one on. We've got a good show today with Barry Tramel. He's always a good show, but this is an especially good one, I think.
Well, and back in I guess it was the late 1800s, and the circuses were traveling around the country, and somebody.
Yeah, that was Barry's first show.
Somebody came up with the term, the show must go on. In other words, it doesn't matter if the lions or the elephants have broken out of their cages, the show must go on. And what I think that's kind of the way the world of sports is taking it. The games must be played, at least in most of the professional leagues. So I'd like to get Barry's take on that. I'm interested to hear what Barry thinks. He's always a big thinker, and these are times when I don't think anybody could say that they've seen anything like this before.
Well, I think that's a good way to start when we get him on. So we'll be back in just a couple of minutes with Barry Tramel. You're watching The Verdict.
I was very lucky to have Holmes Tuttle as my father. In 1965, my father and two other prominent businessmen in Los Angeles went to Ronald Reagan and encouraged him to run for governor. As time went on, they garnered a number of other prominent people to support Reagan, and that's what became known as the kitchen cabinet. I'm Bob Tuttle. I'm the former United States ambassador to the United Kingdom, and I'm very proud to be a Chickasaw. On the day that President Reagan was inaugurated, and there were my parents seated very close to the president in the presidential box, and I thought, maybe we wouldn't be here without my father. That was a very, very proud moment. I can remember him saying to the president, "Ron, this is what I think is best for the country." Every time I come to the library, I walk down the colonnade so I can take a look at that beautiful plaque. I think of my parents, to see them there and know how important they were to the Reagans and how important the Reagans were to them. And all he wanted to do was to do what was best for his country. When my father had passed away, President Reagan spoke at his service, was very moving. And I think part of his growing up in Oklahoma made him love his country, love his nation, and the pride of being a Chickasaw.
See more stories about the Chickasaw people at profilesofenation.com.
We want to reach out to every veteran we can in Oklahoma. There's somewhere around 340,000 veterans here in Oklahoma. And half of those are still unaware of the benefits or don't know how to go about getting them.
We help guide the veterans through the VA system. It's a giant maze, and we kind of help guide them through that maze. So our job is to try to help the veterans get everything that they're legally entitled to. There's just a special place in my heart for our Vietnam veterans and our World War II veterans, as well as any veteran, and that's why I do the job.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Kent Meyers and Mick Cornett with Barry Tramel. Barry is joining us for his 12th appearance on The Verdict. Barry has been a sports writer for his entire adult career, starting when probably before he was an adult.
Thanks for having me, guys.
How much has your job changed and from your daily, weekly schedule? How is your life different now than before March 11th?
Well, it's sort of symbolized by what we're doing here. A whole lot of Zoom calls, a lot more technology. A lot of times I'm in the middle of something like this, and I have the epiphany that I'm an old dog and this is a new trick. And, it's not, sometimes it doesn't go well. I was trying to, a couple of weeks ago, I was trying to ask Lincoln Riley a question via Zoom on my phone. These Zooms on my laptop work great, but when all of a sudden it's different on your iPhone. So I couldn't unmute myself, and so technology beat me that day. So that's really the biggest difference is all the remote communication. Press conferences are all via Zoom. I've not been to a live press conference since March. Even at the stadium, I've covered 2 games so far, college football games. You go to the press box, you sit 6-8 feet away from anybody else, and then after the game, you have a press conference with the coaches and players who are down below in the locker room area, and you're still in the press box, and this is the way we do it via Zoom. So it's really a technological adjustment is really the main thing. You're right, I do all my writing at home anyway, but now I'm doing a whole lot of interpersonal communication via Zoom.
Yeah. What's the tone of the fan base? Are you getting a lot of negativity, or people have a positive energy? I'm not talking about the wins and losses of a team. I'm just talking about, is there a general morose over lives? Because you touch people in a way that people like to get, a little bit of a relief from the craziness of the world. They like to read your column to get away from, some things that are, much more serious in nature. What's your take on the mood of the reader?
I think Oklahomans, as it pertains to sports, have done a pretty good job of accepting things out of their control. They sort of realize this is unprecedented times. They realize this is a crazy year in which we're living, and while everybody's going through an adjustment, for the most part, they're accepting of some of the changes we have to make. When I look at the impossible ticket distribution problems that the Sooners and the Cowboys had, most fans have been fairly forgiving. In other words, if they didn't get tickets this year, or if they wanted tickets and didn't get them, or if they had to change their seats, in the past, we would hear from fans, griping about the 11 a.m. kickoffs. Nobody's griping about what time we're kicking off these days. They sort of realize just kicking off at all is a good thing, so let's enjoy it. So that's an example. I think I've been pretty pleased with the way sports fans have sort of responded to the pandemic.
Well, considering the crazy way that our state was founded in the first place, we've been dealing with unusual circumstances for a long time, and I agree with you that Oklahomans, I don't necessarily know about sports fans, but Oklahomans in general are adapting pretty well. Once they understand what the problem is, they seem to be able to adapt to it. If they're in the dark about what the problem is, you may see a little more reluctance to go along with some of these things. Well, talk after that little lecture, talk a little bit about the opening of the college football season, not simply here in the state, but around the country.
Well, it's just been very strange. I'm like everybody else that's a college football fan. You spend most of the week just checking the news feeds and see if your game got canceled. Oklahoma played Missouri State a couple of weeks ago, and right up to the very end, up until Friday, we weren't for sure that the Sooners were going to meet the thresholds of having enough players on the roster available or at certain positions. And then 2 weeks later, Kansas State's coming to Norman, and it's the same thing only with Kansas State. The Wildcats were short on players because of COVID-related issues. So there's a little bit of an apprehension each week. Will we get to play this game? That's one major change. The other thing is, if you go to the stadium, it's just so strange. I actually went to the first game, Oklahoma, Missouri State. The press box has been limited. It's been cut about 75% in capacity. So press credentials are not in abundance. I actually was not assigned to cover that OU Missouri State game. I was going to go to OSU Tulsa. Then OSU Tulsa gets postponed 3 or 4 days before kickoff. So I had that Saturday free. I just went to OU Missouri State as a spectator. I found a couple of tickets, and my wife and I went, and it was very strange. I live about 6 miles from Owen Field, on game day, if I left my house an hour and a half before kickoff, I would be hard pressed to be in the stadium. I was parked 2 blocks from the stadium in 11 minutes that night. And, you know, it takes me longer than that to go pick her up from work on a Tuesday afternoon. So just everything about it is just strange. You get in the stadium and there's all kinds of space around you. And, you know, a college football game is known for its mob. It's a mash of people waiting in line at the concession stand, waiting in line to get into the game, waiting in line to walk down the aisle to your seats. Those crowds are gone. So it's just a very surreal feeling, I think, for everybody as it pertains to college football. In the press box, like I said, to talk to my colleague, I usually lean over and whisper something to him about something we saw in the game. Don't want the competitors to know what we saw. Now you got to yell it out. You're wearing a mask. You got to yell it out because he's 8 feet away and you're talking through a mask. So it's just complete surrealism, but everybody's going through it. So it's, you know, within a few more weeks, it's going to be pretty normal to us.
About a minute left in this segment, I think, Barry. Can you talk about what OU Texas will be like without the state fair?
It reminds me of a B movie from the 50s, the day the earth stood still, you know, when, you know, all the people are gone from earth. If you went to the OU Arkansas Cotton Bowl 19 years ago,
yeah,
Cotton Bowl at the old Cotton Bowl Stadium on New Year's morning, there's no fair. And it's just kooky. You walk out and say, where'd everybody go? This is not the way it's supposed to be. But you get inside and at least, Oklahoma and Arkansas filled up the stadium. That's not going to be the case at the Cotton Bowl on the 10th of October. I think each school is going to get 11 to 12,000 tickets. It's just going to be a very, very crazy feeling watching the Sooners and the Longhorns in that environment.
That's a very different picture with half the stadium not being red and half not being orange. Well, listen, we better take a break now, folks, for a couple of minutes for our sponsors to get their words in. You're watching The Verdict. We'll be right back.
OU Law has a history and heritage that are unparalleled. At the University of Oklahoma College of Law, we empower our students to pursue the career of their dreams. We have the highest U.S. News ranking ever achieved by an Oklahoma law school. We are the first law school in the country to launch a college-wide digital initiative. And this year, our competition teams rank number 2 in the nation. OU Law, generations of excellence, limitless possibilities.
The good life comes naturally to Tulsa, where nature's beauty is matched with an eye for aesthetics. A legacy of neighborhoods graced with lawns and landscaping and handsome homes. A place that seems to have patented an ideal lifestyle. Bank First is loyal to the quality of life Tulsa assures its citizens, to the priority placed on education, culture, and growth. Loyal to builders who transform raw land into residential charm. Developers who see opportunity and add vitality to Tulsa's economy. Bank First serves both enterprise and private lives that need a loyal partner. It's how we help nurture this city's very good life. Bank First. Loyal to Oklahoma. Loyal to you.
And welcome back to The Verdict with Mick Cornett and Barry Tramel. I'm Kent Meyers. We're glad you joined us this Sunday. Mick, where would you like to take us?
Well, let's talk about college football here in the state. As we tape this, Oklahoma has lost an early game. I think people were surprised that Kansas State was able to pull off such a fourth quarter comeback. What were your thoughts, Barry?
Well, it was stunning. You should not lose a game when you lead by 21 points late in the third quarter. Very disappointing. Oklahoma played great for literally 40 minutes, and then the last 20 minutes just collapsed. So it's sort of explainable, though, because, you know, the Sooners are so accustomed to great quarterbacking. And the first year of Baker Mayfield, 2015, going all the way through Jalen Hurts, that's 5 years. And all those guys were experienced. Even Baker, when he took over in 15, that was his third year. He'd had a year under his belt at Texas Tech. So veteran quarterbacks. Spencer Rattler is a new guy. He's just learning the position on the college level. That was his first game against a Big 12 opponent. He played great for a while, and then he struggled. Same with the defense. You know, the Sooners were not very good on defense last year, and then they lost 3 players to the NFL. Plus, their 2 best pass rushers were not playing. Jalen Redmond opted out for health reasons. Ronnie Perkins is suspended. I don't know how we expected the Oklahoma defense to lose that kind of talent and then get better. So, you know, I think Oklahoma will find its footing. I think the Sooners will challenge for the Big 12 title. They're 6th straight, but it's not always going to be easy. This is a sign of things to come. The Big 12 is pretty close to Oklahoma in terms of competitiveness.
Kent, let's switch over and talk about the Thunder.
Yeah, Barry, tell us what you think about the changes at the Thunder and anything you want to talk about in relation to the Thunder.
Well, it's a very strange time for the Thunder for a lot of reasons. Billy Donovan is out as the coach. He decided that this was not really the pending rebuild, whether it comes immediately or in the near future. He didn't really want to go through that. The financial difficulties of the NBA. Most NBA teams have been wiped out by the pandemic. All of them will face financial problems. Billy Donovan was due a new contract. No way was the Thunder going to be able to pay him the $6 million a year that he had been getting. So he found a better opportunity in his mind in Chicago. So new coach, and we don't know what the roster is going to look like. We've been saying for years, ever since Kevin Durant left, really, that winter is coming. The Thunder's going to have to go through a rebuild. Chris Paul got here last year and, you know, sort of delayed that. They played great, had a wonderful season, an enchanting playoff even, with the 7-game series with the Rockets. But we still don't know if Chris Paul is going to be back. He would be great trade bait for the rebuild. So the Thunder is going to be completely different very soon. Is that next season? Not sure. But heck, we don't even know when the season's going to be. We don't know if there's going to be fans in the stands. We don't know what the salary cap's going to be. There are so many unknowns in the NBA right now that the Thunder really has to slow play its plans for a rebuild. So it's, you know, just go in with your eyes wide open because there are so many unknowns. The only thing you really know is that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander will be part of the long-term plan. That's really the only thing we know.
Do you think Sam Presti will make a significant move, try and swap some of those future draft picks to move up this year?
I do not think that the Thunder will try to move up in the draft this year. I think the draft in a couple of years is going to be much better. Very soon, perhaps in 21 or maybe 22, I think 18-year-olds, guys coming out of high school, are going to be again eligible for the NBA draft. When that happens, it's going to be a virtual double draft with perhaps close to twice as much talent as normal. When that happens, you want all the draft picks you get that you can get. So the draft picks of 2020 are not going to be as valuable as draft picks of 21 or 22. So I think Sam will probably hold on to those and just sort of let it ride here in 2020.
Barry, I've got from your column, I'm pretty sure, that that Billy Donovan, while liked and disliked, I guess, here in the state, coaching the Thunder, had an outstanding 1-loss record. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, I think Billy Donovan is sort of an enigma. You know, I forgot the exact number, but I think he's got the 11th best winning percentage in NBA history among coaches with at least 5 years on the job, which is remarkable. I mean, if you ask fans around Oklahoma City, they might have said he has the 11th best winning percentage of current NBA coaches. So, you know, but here's the deal. Most people would realize Billy did a really good job. Now, personally, I think Billy did a really good job year 1, 2, and 5. Years 3 and 4, the Paul George years, I thought the Thunder underachieved because I thought their talent was pretty high. They won 48 and 49 games those years, got eliminated in the first round of the playoffs. Wasn't his greatest coaching jobs, but in general, Billy did a very good job. And around the league, I think that's sort of known and sort of accepted. You know, Chicago wanted him bad. He was on the 76ers list to interview. I got a call from a guy in New Orleans distraught that the Pelicans didn't get a shot at Billy Donovan. So I think around the league, people looked at Billy and think, this guy's a really good coach. In Oklahoma, I think, well, he's a good coach, but it's no big deal that he left. So a little bit of a stranger in his own home syndrome. So I think the NBA is really sort of it's a place where there's a lot of good coaches. There aren't a lot of great coaches. Greg Popovich, and maybe that's the end of the list, really, in difference-making coaches. So I can see why Sam Presti was ready to move on in terms of not paying a guy $6 million a year to coach when you probably can get somebody a lot cheaper who's going to do about the same thing, especially in this rebuilding era that the Thunder faces.
Sam Presti had to make a decision about Steven Adams' future coming up. And, you know, when his contract was extended, it was a different league back then. We expected different skill sets from centers. What's your thoughts on Adams and his future with the Thunder or in the NBA?
Well, I think Steven Adams is still a very valuable player. You don't want to be paying him $25 million a year, which is what he's been getting. So Adams, still a good player, just the economics didn't work out. He's got 1 year left on that contract. I expect him to remain a Thunder unless somebody really wants a Steven Adams. There are a few teams that probably could use some more inside help. But as you mentioned, Mick, it's a different league. We expect our centers to step out and shoot the three-pointer and guard more on the perimeter. Steven Adams is sort of an old school center. Probably not a lot of demand for that skill set in this NBA. I expect Steven Adams to remain a Thunder for another year, then go into free agency, and I think there's a good chance he would stay in Oklahoma City even at that point.
Barry, I'm afraid that's going to have to be the last word on. We're out of time. Thank you so much for joining us. Good luck with your coverage of the sports in Oklahoma. Keep it up. Keep up the great work you do, and we'll have you back soon for your 14th and 15th appearance.
Fantastic. Hopefully it won't be on Zoom.
That's right. I hope we're face to face. You're watching The Verdict. This is Kent Meyers with Mick Cornett. We'll be right back to close the show.
It used to be okay in teachers' lounges. It used to be okay in maternity wards. It was okay in sporting arenas, college campuses, and office spaces. But now that we understand the deadly dangers of secondhand smoke, that's not okay anymore. So why is it okay that thousands of employees are exposed to it every day at work? Bottom line, it's not okay. Let's protect hardworking Oklahomans. Join the fight at stopswithme.com.
All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. For more information, call 23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
You will always be Mom and Dad to me.
I think for us, Once we got started and we began to see the tremendous need just within our state, it really was just a calling for us. The blessings far outweigh any obstacles that we've faced.
You will always be Mom and Dad to me.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Kent Meyers and Mick Cornett dealing with the Barry Tramel show. He always does a great job. Brought you folks up to date on the sports scene in Oklahoma. What do you think, Mick?
Well, I've always been impressed by Barry seeming to take the conversation one level up. In other words, we see a game or we're following a team pretty closely, and we think we have opinions that matter. And all of a sudden you read one of Barry's columns and he's taken it to a new level. The conversation is kind of a different take, which I think is what makes him a good columnist. It's not only his ability to write, it's his ability to move beyond the normal sports conversation and to take a closer look.
Well, that's going to probably have to be it for this week's show. You've been watching The Verdict with Kent Meyers and Mick Cornett and our guest Barry Tramel. Thanks very much for watching. We'll see you next week. By the way, we've got a very interesting show next week with Joe Ty, Mick.
Good. Look forward to it.
Yeah, I think it should be good. We're going to be talking about the RBG situation in the Supreme Court and what constitutional problems that raises with a real constitutional law expert. Well, folks, we really appreciate you joining us today, and we'll see you next week. Been watching The Verdict.